You're listening to Taste for Truth Weight Loss Encouragement. I'm your host, Barb Raveling. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have all of you here. And I think you guys have known that I've talked about winding this podcast down and gave out an invitation to anybody, an invitation and a request to anybody who has victory stories that they want to tell. We'd love to hear them. And today I have a victory story, somebody who volunteered, and that is Jennifer. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for having me, Barb.
Yeah, it's good to have you here because I've gotten to know Jennifer a little bit through working. I can't remember. Did we meet each other in a class first, a different class?
Yes. First, you hooked me up with an accountability partner, and then later I took part in your online class. Which one was it? Was it
maybe like Philippians, maybe.
Philippians. It was the Philippians.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, so it's we've already, have a connection. And so anyway, I'm excited to hear your story. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Oh, I'm 53, and I had to think about that to make sure that's still true. I'm from Pennsylvania. We now live in Northern Kentucky. We've moved around a lot. My husband worked for the government. I've been married for 26 years. I am a freelance advertising copywriter, and I'm working on my first novel. And that's me.
Yeah, that's exciting. Okay, so we're going to talk about your weight loss victory, or maybe your renewing victory. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your weight loss history?
Okay, well, I've always struggled with my weight. I suppose you hear that a lot. As a child, I was struggling with undiagnosed ADHD. I only found that out a couple of years ago that's what the issue was. But I had a lot of anxiety because of it. And anxiety, I didn't realize I had anxiety as a child. You just think that's normal. I was nervous about everything and worried about everything and always stressing about everything. And I learned pretty early to use food as a way to soothe. It became a habit, and a very deeply ingrained habit. And probably what made things harder was, and not to bash my parents, and, they're both gone, so anything I say won't hurt them. They didn't mean to hurt me, but they taught me what they believed, and I learned kind of two contradictory lessons from them at home, which I'm sure a lot of people do, and it seems a strange thing. And one was that I should be able to eat whatever I want, whenever I want. I shouldn't have to have boundaries around food, basically. And the other one, interestingly enough, is being overweight is bad, and being thin.
Those do not go together well, do they?
Don't, but a lot of people who struggle with food issues, that they have both of those issues. They think that they should be able to not have boundaries around food, but they also don't believe that they can possibly be happy if they're not slim. Yeah,
so interesting, because I don't think I ever believed that I shouldn't have boundaries, but I did believe that the boring life was the life with boundaries. So if I wanted to have fun in life, then I wanted to be able to eat whatever I wanted. And also the same thing, the skinny thing is important, is what I also learned growing up.
No, I get it. And I think I think I actually did learn that I should be, because, it's funny. My mother was never overweight. She didn't have temptations that way. So she kind of ate normally, naturally. But I remember her even saying to me once when I was visiting her, I had gone out fitness walking. That's my exercise of choice. And she and my father both said, well, we're very proud of you for the weight you've lost, but we're so sorry you have to do that in order to keep it off. And I didn't say anything, but I was like, Mom and Dad, I should be doing this. It's a healthy thing to get regular exercise,
They were sorry you had to go walking to keep
yes,
that's funny.
They felt like it should be like it wasn't sad that I couldn't naturally keep the weight off, that I had to actually exercise. And that sort of thing wasn't not discouraged, not by any means, but it was not held as a good habit to develop. So
that's so interesting. Because first of all, it is a really good habit to develop, no matter if you struggle with food or not. And then the other thing is, I do think a lot of times we have this attitude that, hey, it should be easy. Why am I not a normal person? Why am I still struggling this? It should be easy. Did you struggle with that at all?
Oh yeah, I was very resentful when I was young. I felt, "Well, it's not fair. Why do I have this particular problem? I keeping the weight off should be easy. I should be able to do whatever I want, and not have to worry about this or think about this or limit myself or, and it was the same with exercise too. I mean, I was a real bookworm and an introvert and, getting regular exercise. I kind of dreaded gym class. And now I know you don't have to be competitive to get regular exercise, which is a wonderful thing to find out. I love walking and hiking and things like that, but at the time it was difficult for me because I thought you had to be a certain way to achieve a certain thing. And if you weren't, then you were doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then also going back to that, you know, I shouldn't have to struggle with it. I mean, if you look at it, what percentage of people in our country, even the United States, struggle with eating too much? And I bet it's at least 70%, maybe, right? 70, 80%.
Probably nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. So we are in the majority if we struggle with it. But not
Mhm.
only that, for people who don't struggle with it, everybody struggles with something. I have not met
Right.
one person who doesn't have something in their life that they want to get over with and they can't get over it.
Yes.
So it's normal to struggle with things. It's sad, it's hard,
It is,
but
but
it is
I
normal.
I think it's human, and I did eventually come to realize that if it hadn't been food for me, it probably would have been something else because that's human. We tend to want to turn to anything other than the Lord to make us happy and to soothe us, and we want something easy and quick. And this just happened to be it for me. And it was difficult. My mother was a really good cook, and she was proud of her cooking skills. And when I was trying to diet, because yes, I was dieting, I yo-yo dieted quite a bit until the last few years. And when I was dieting, she wanted me to lose weight, but at the same time, she said, "I just want you to have a good time. I don't want you to I want you to be able to enjoy yourself, when I was, not having something." And part of it was because she just didn't understand my particular problem that way because she didn't share it. She had her
Right.
own, you know,
Yeah, people who don't share the overeating struggle don't usually
they
understand
don't,
it.
they
They
don't
just think,
really get it. Well, just
yeah,
don't eat too
yeah,
much.
just don't
Yeah.
eat. Yeah. If we could do that, we wouldn't have that problem.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like I always used to when I was a little kid, not that a teenager. I used to see, you remember the commercials for the anti uh, appetite suppressants? You won't
I
feel
don't think
hungry.
so.
Well,
No.
oh yeah. Well, there was an over-the-counter appetite suppressant. I was thinking, if I only ate when I felt hungry, I would never struggle with my weight. You know?
Oh, that's interesting. That's true
Yeah.
too, because a lot of times certain boundary systems or you see ads for eating programs or I guess the suppressants
Mhm.
too. Yeah, and they say, "Oh, you'll never feel hungry." But the truth is we eat when we're not hungry. Most of
Oh
us
yeah.
struggle with eating when we're not hungry, when we're anxious or when we're angry or when we're
Bored,
stressed out or bored. Right.
lonely.
So it's
Yeah,
really not
whatever.
about hunger. Oh,
Hmm.
that's interesting. I don't know if we've ever talked about that in this podcast, but I've noticed that too. And I think that's so
Yeah.
funny. If that were the only problem, we'd be happy.
Yes.
it'd,
Yeah. Oh
it'd be
yeah.
easy.
Sure. Yeah.
So what was different this time? So when you started, because how long do you feel like you've been living in victory now?
About a year and a half.
Okay, well, that's a long
Then,
time. Hmm.
yeah. I joke with people that, say, "Oh my gosh, you've lost so much weight." I enjoyed losing 80 pounds so much that I've done it 3 times now, and I'm working on doing it the fourth time now. So,
So three times over your life. And
yes.
and then so a year and a half ago, had you already lost all your weight a year and a half ago or
No, I started about a year and a half ago. I started
okay.
with your book, Freedom from Emotional Eating. That was the
Okay.
first one, right? And then I followed it up with Taste for Truth.
Hmm.
And I also did the Renewing of the Mind project. So those were great for me every day to teach me how to renew my mind, to use renewing my mind to deal with my basically with my emotional eating.
Oh yeah, that's good. So what
Mhm.
did it look like? Take us back to a year and a half ago. You started the Bible study. You also started
Yeah,
boundary system at that time.
I did. Yeah. Let's see, that was a year and a half ago. So I was 60 pounds heavier. And I had also just been diagnosed with ADHD, inattentive ADHD, and I won't get into that too much, but it did help me understand myself a bit more. Um, and I started doing it, freedom from emotional eating, and it was hugely helpful. At first, the method I was using for weight loss was a combination of clean eating, avoiding processed foods and things like that, and calorie counting, portion control.
Okay.
And then when I read about boundaries, what you had to say about boundaries in I Deserve a Donut, I thought, well, eventually I hope to get to a point, and I'm not there yet, where I don't have to tally my calories every day and to try to keep, I'm hoping that'll become second nature, but I think I'm always going to need boundaries around food. And I noticed that you had pretty good boundaries. I liked yours, which was three meals a day and a snack. And I
Hmm.
don't always have the snack. That's part of my boundary. If I feel the need of it, I can have it.
Right.
And I don't, other little things I do like that are around it. I only let myself have one serving at a time of anything, so if I want another serving, and I almost never do, but I have to only have portioned it out first to see how I feel that way.
That's good.
And by having boundaries, people talk about mindful eating, and that's wonderful if you can do it. I'm not sure I'd be able to do it.
Hmm.
So boundaries are helpful for me because you were very reasonable in what you said in freedom from emotional eating. You have boundaries in other areas of your life. You paid off your credit card every month. You don't go, well, I'm not saying you said this, but you don't go cussing or, you don't say everything.
I don't go cussing.
Yeah, you don't go cussing and, like stuff like that. And I thought, well, that makes sense. Why do I think I don't need boundaries in this area? I have boundaries in all kinds of, I don't spend money willy-nilly. I don't drink to excess. I don't um, speed crazily on the highway and stuff like that. Why do I don't question those boundaries. And when you put it that way, it seems so reasonable. It's like, where did I get the idea I didn't need boundaries here? I need boundaries everywhere.
Well, you got the idea because you learned that growing up, I should be able to eat what I want when I want, right? And that you were depriving yourself when you didn't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that I think was my mother's concern. She didn't want me to eat too much, but she didn't want me to be deprived, and she just didn't realize that I was using food in a way that food was not designed by the Lord to be used.
Right.
Basically a replacement for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what Timothy Keller said about in his book Counterfeit Idols. An idol is a good thing that we turn into everything. Like money can be an idol, your own children can be an idol, your spouse can be an idol, your job. It's like, well, I was making food an idol. I was using it in a way that the Lord didn't want me to use it. He made food to nourish us. And because he's a wonderful creator who has just given us so much beautiful variety in our lives, he wanted us to enjoy it. But so it's okay to enjoy food, and it's even okay to have feast days, and the Israelites were commanded to do that. But he didn't mean it to become a replacement, a place to go when we're struggling with other things, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling bored, when we're in need of a little excitement or something like that. So
Right. And the more jobs we give it, the more we're going to struggle with overeating and our weight. Because
yes,
the more reasons we go to the food, then the more we're going to eat and we're just going to struggle. Whether as we just go to it for hunger or because it's a mealtime,
nourishment,
we're not going to
right.
struggle.
Or to enjoy with other people. You get together at a holiday and you have a dinner together, and that's fun. But and also the more we struggle, the more we do it, the less happy it makes us. It's never going to give us what we need.
Right.
That's true of, I think, of everything we try to turn into an idol. It
Mhm.
can't do the job. We're asking too much of it, and it won't
Yeah.
make us happy. It's going to disappoint us. And in the case of eating too much, it's going to make you miserable, unhealthy, and not happy. My knees were really painful, and I couldn't, I have a riding donkey. I think, he's so cute, and I was too heavy to ride him because it wasn't fair to ask him to carry that weight. And there were just a lot of things I couldn't do. And you want to be attractive for your spouse and all those things. And, he loved me anyway, but yeah, so I was trying to, it's not a good idol. It's not a very faithful idol that makes you happy. It does not, when you worship it, it doesn't bless you in return.
Right. And it's counterintuitive because we think the more the better. So if
Hmm.
one serving of one piece of cake was great, well, two is going to be even better because it was so great. But the truth
Yeah.
is, if you concentrate in a small amount, like one piece, and really enjoy it, you actually get far more enjoyment out of it than if you have two or three or four pieces of cake.
And you're correct. And I noticed that was something you also said in, I think, Taste for Truth, where you talked about the satisfaction level goes down with each serving.
Right.
So you
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of satisfaction with maybe one little bowl of ice cream, but if you have another bowl of ice cream, it doesn't give you the same good feeling. It's funny how we think we have to keep getting more and more. More is better.
Right. And depending on how sweet it is, sometimes like 3 bites is the prime amount of goodness.
Yes.
If it's something that's just really rich, it might be a
Uh-huh.
10 for only 3 bites or 4 bites. So it just kind of depends on the food. But
Hmm.
yeah. So you did the Bible study, but
Hmm.
how did you make yourself follow the boundaries during the day? Did you have to renew during the day as well?
Oh,
Or I
yes.
guess, how did you get that lie out of your system that, you know, the more the better, or I
Well,
should
yeah,
probably not?
I had a lot of lies I was struggling with. I can't be happy if I don't have this. This is too hard. I can't do this. And I shouldn't have to do this. And often I found out too that procrastination snuck in there. I was using it for other things. So when I started with the renewing, I would do my lesson in the morning, and I had already identified a while ago, when I was a trigger time for me, which is around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I
That's good to
almost
know.
ne Yeah, it is. If you think about it, I think most people who struggle with that, when I saw that somewhere, I read an article about trigger times. I don't think I'd eat all the time. And then when I really thought about it, I thought, no, there are specific times where I'm more susceptible than others. I'm not susceptible in the evening after dinner.
Yeah, the interesting thing from what I found from talking to a bunch of people is people who work at home, or if you're home with
Yes.
the kids or you're working a
Mhm.
job, they struggle from 3 to 5. People who work outside the home struggle in the evening, or
Yeah.
retired people, if you're not working, if you're home, it's often 3 to 5. And of course, that's not
Yeah.
true across the board, but it's common.
But it can be different for everybody. And part of that, the reason I think we have triggers is I read somewhere it's because you're mentally tired by that point. You need a break. And oftentimes being tired translates into hunger. See, that's one thing I
Hmm,
learned.
interesting.
Yeah, I learned from that weight loss program I was telling you about earlier that I did a long time ago. It's stop a minute before you eat. Are you really hungry, or are you thirsty, or do you need a nap? Or something like that. It might not actually be hunger. Sometimes your body translates being tired to hungry.
Well,
So
also, oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So in the afternoon, that was where it was for me. I've been busy all day. I'd burned a lot of cognitive energy at work. And now I was tired, and, it seemed like a nice break to eat something.
Right. And I think too, also at 3 o'clock, a lot of times that's when we've been beating ourselves up for a few hours by then. If we're
Mhm.
procrastinators and we haven't done everything we thought we'd do, by 3 o'clock, we're well into, oh, I'm so terrible, man. I can't get
Yeah.
anything done. I just had a revolutionary new thing I'm doing. We'll see if I'm still doing it a month out, but I've been doing it for a week now and I love it. So in the morning, I have to do all the things. And this is just for people who are listening. This is only for people who stay at home and don't have little kids at home. So more like either retired people or entrepreneurs or, writers, that sort of
That's
people.
me too.
Right. Because if you have little kids, you can't do this policy, unfortunately. But what I do is I say, I can't do any work I don't want to do in the afternoon. So I have to get all my hard work done in the morning. So all the work that's either stressful emotionally or I just don't want to do it, I don't like it, that has to be done
Mhm.
before 12. And at 12 o'clock, I don't start just having fun because I'd be super bored. I don't have enough fun in my life to do between 12 and the time my husband gets home. So I still do work, but I do little easy projects that I don't mind. It's like things I kind of like. And it's so interesting. I'm getting more done now after I started that program than I was before, because before I was trying to still get all those horrible things done and I couldn't make myself do it because, like you said, the self-control was gone. And so
Mhm.
that brought 3 o'clock, definitely temptation land. And now it's like, I feel like I'm giving myself grace and enjoying the afternoon.
And that's great. Now, one problem I did have with that is when it came to eating before I started renewing my mind is sometimes if I was, this was before I started losing the weight, which I'm hoping is the last time this time, uh, I would get up in the morning and I would work out and I would eat well all day. And then I would get to around 3 o'clock and I'd be tired. And one of the lies I'd start telling myself is, well, you've done so well today.
Oh, I did that. I do that in the evening usually. Go ahead, keep
Yes.
going.
Yeah, and then you just blow the day then because you're like, oh well, you deserve it. You got you exercised. Hey, that that has to count for like 500 million calories, right?
Right. Well, and
No,
you've done
it
so well
doesn't.
following your plan, you deserve a treat. And
You deserve a treat for
as
doing
soon as
that.
you
Yes,
have the treat, no, you've no longer done well if the
you've no
treat's
longer
outside
done
of your
well. And
boundaries.
then and that was the other thing too is one thing you suggested to do, which was really key for me and very difficult, and I still struggle with this. And I'd like to point out too to your listeners that I'm not perfect. I have not had a perfect time all the way through. I've been consistent, and that's good. And I think it's getting better. But I show myself more grace. But one of the things that I had trouble with in the beginning was renewing after I broke my boundaries
Oh,
because
interesting.
yeah, I could renew before I broke my boundaries. I could renew on a scheduled time, like, okay, I have a little phone alarm set. So ding, it's time to stop and renew your mind. But I, if I broke my boundaries, I'm such a perfectionist, and that doesn't mean I do things perfectly. I think you and I were talking about this the other day. The danger about perfectionism is not so much I have to do everything perfectly. It's if I don't do it perfectly, I quit. So didn't, if I did break my boundaries, I wouldn't want to renew my mind. I'd say, okay, well, this day's shot. I'll just start over tomorrow.
Interesting.
So, I had to actually think about how I was feeling, and it did make me more aware of why I broke my boundaries and also helped make it less likely that I was going to continue breaking my boundaries. So instead of having a bad day, if I broke my boundaries, I might have had a bad half hour, or a bad 15 minutes or something.
Oh,
If
yeah,
that
that's a good way to redefine it.
right.
And
Because
also, if you look at it as like, I think I'm going to do an interview with Christy Osborne on Loving Life Sober. She was also the
Mhm.
one that talked about assigning jobs to alcohol or what we do to food. But she talked about calling them growth points. So
Mhm.
anytime you break your boundary, it's a growth point, but it's only a growth point if you take the time to renew your mind or find out,
Right.
okay, why did you do that? How can I do things differently or do something to actually make it a growth point?
Yes. And they turned out the questions in I Deserve a Donut and Taste for Truth and the lessons, the questions that you have, I love the way you had me go digging through scripture.
Mhm.
It was like I've done based diets in the past. Yours isn't a diet, it's more of a Bible study. You have to find your own, which I think is good because, if we were talking about this too. You have to find what works for you, your own boundaries.
Right.
But digging through scripture showed me the truth about a lot of things. And I didn't realize how many lies I was believing or how many were, I might have thought that, oh, overeating isn't really addressed in the Bible, but it's not really about overeating or weight or anything like that.
Right. That's true.
It's about, it's a funny thing. It's something I said to, I think one of the best things, the thing that really has helped me give up the skinny idol, the belief that I can't be happy unless I'm skinny, is realizing that probably neither God nor the enemy care if we're skinny or fat. What they care about is how close we are to the Lord.
Right. Hmm.
God wants us to be close to Him. And if we're using food in place of Him, that's going to come between us. And the enemy's going to love that because he doesn't care how we look. he just is glad of anything, and he's going to encourage anything that's going to separate us from God. So when I started looking at it that way, it kind of put things in perspective. And I thought, once it stopped being so important to me at the skinny idol, when I do make a mistake now, when I do break my boundaries, when I do slip, I'm able to go into it. Okay, I broke my boundaries. That's not a good thing. I'm going to renew my mind now. It's not the end of the world. I'm only human. I'm a broken, fallen human. God has grace. He'll forgive me over and over again. I have to show myself grace. I can't be beating myself up and saying, well, you blew it. It's all over. You might as well quit. And I
Right.
can't use that as an excuse to fall back into despair or discouragement. So I think that's what really made the difference for me. Oddly enough, giving up the skinny idol, giving up the belief that I had to be skinny has made it easier for me to lose weight and keep it off.
And I would say that too. I think most people are like that. And I think the reason is, well, for you, it's interesting because you said it helped you renew your mind. You need to give up the skinny idol to get yourself to renew your mind after you broke your boundaries. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because it wasn't such a calamity then when I broke my boundaries. I mean, it wasn't such the end of the world if I had a bad had a binge or a bad moment in the afternoon, or ate something I shouldn't have, or had a second donut,
All
or
right.
something like that. It wasn't the end of the world. It was a mistake.
And the reason it was hard for you is because you were being perfectionist about saying you had to renew before you broke your
Right.
boundaries. Whereas me, I wasn't perfectionist about that because I thought, oh, I can't make myself renew before. I'll just do it afterwards.
Yeah.
So I
No,
think
well,
that's
for
why I
me,
didn't need to give up
yeah.
skinny idol for that.
And that was true. But part of it was just, I mean, I had to give up the notion that I'm on a diet, if that
Right.
makes sense. Because a diet, I've always had that issue. Like I've always had to, I've struggled with that in other areas, even in school and stuff. I have to do each assignment perfectly. If I didn't, I might as well drop the class. I mean, I haven't done that, but just, if I miss a workout, then I've blown my workouts for the week. No, I didn't. I didn't. I've done other good things, for my body for the week. It's getting 3 workouts in instead of 4. That's more than I was managing. It's not giving up that failure mindset. I think the enemy loves us to think of ourselves as failures because then we don't keep trying, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. And he likes us downtrodden. He doesn't want us to experience the fruit of the spirit. For
Yes.
me,
Yeah.
that giving up the skinny idol is what kept me from binging at night. So it didn't
Yeah.
affect my renewing. In fact, renewing is what made me give up the skinny idol. But once I got rid of the idea that, oh, I have to be skinny, then there is no, oh, I better binge tonight because tomorrow I'm going to give it
Mhm.
up. Because I think a lot of the binging sometimes is self-condemnation, beating ourselves up too. I mean, it's opportunity eating, of course, because we're,
Opportunity and
yeah,
beating themselves up is sort of self-punishment, and don't and it's hard when these lessons you learned as children, they stick with you. So I don't want your listeners to think this is easy. I mean, I frequently have to do in my I deserve a donut. I have my copy right here because I like paper copies. I frequently have to go back to that. I have to be skinny, or I need to be skinny, and do that over again. No, I really don't.
right, yeah.
I mean, I really don't, because it was hard for me the first time I did that one. I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, if I had been offered the opportunity to be able to eat whatever I wanted and never gain a pound, would I have tried to put boundaries around my eating? Would I have tried to escape from the stronghold that was putting distance between me and the Lord? I don't think I would. I think I would have continued eating, and I needed to be doing it. It's like what my parents said about feeling sorry for me about having to walk miles and miles to keep the weight off. I walk because I like to walk. That's my exercise. But I also exercise because it's good for my body. I like the way it makes me feel. And yes, I like the way it makes me look too. But I should be doing it anyway. That was the point. I needed to have boundaries. I shouldn't let this be ruling my soul, becoming an idol for me, eating this way. And my reason for doing so was because I was worried about not having it be about a stronghold, or wanting to overcome the stronghold was about how I looked. I didn't think I could be acceptable if I
Yeah.
wasn't skinny.
And I think most of us start out that way. And then we shift. We start out making it about the weight, and then we shift to getting closer to God and wanting to give it up. And I feel like I've been eating so much healthier the last few years, and
Mhm.
I actually really enjoy eating healthy. I mean, I still eat sweets sometimes. I cut them out if it's like I feel like they're overtaking me. But
Yeah.
overall, I like to feel healthy. So yeah, we don't need to be at a good weight to be happy,
Hmm.
and we don't need to be at a good weight to be acceptable. But
Right.
health isn't an either or option, same with happy and those other things, but health is a continuum. And one of
Yeah.
the things that affects our health is our weight. So I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, okay, I'll just eat way as much as I want because I don't need to be skinny to be happy. Because
Yeah, but if
we want to
you
live a
can't
good
do that
lifestyle.
anyway. Yeah, that's the point though. If you ate as much as you want, you know, you're probably doing that, or at least I would be doing that for the wrong reasons. I'd be doing it because I was bored or
Right.
because I was procrastinating or afraid of failure. You know, that was another way for me to eat, or because I was scared of something or anxious. You know, where should I be going instead? You know, I'm going to food when I should be going back to the word, you know, and recognizing what you said, I'm like, well, how do we know what is truth? Well, we know God's word is truth. And what is God's word? That's the Bible. That's where I should be going for that. And that was just a huge, it was an epiphany for me. I just feel like you're not going to be terribly overweight if you're not putting food as, using food as an idol. If you're not
Yeah,
emotional.
I'd agree with that. I mean, you can maybe be 20 pounds. Of course, I was like 20, 25 pounds overweight, and I was using food as an idol. And even though that's not that much overweight.
It's not, and I was very overweight, but it's kind of like I guess you could be. It's kind of funny. I also believe that everybody could have six pack abs if they want them. I don't want them. I mean,
Too
it would be
much
nice.
work.
Yeah, if I could get them for free and not have to
Right.
maintain them, then sure, I'll take them, but it's not worth it to me. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not going to try to be, if I'm in a healthy weight range, if you know, that's, I'm going to be perfectly satisfied with that. If I lose a little more to be on the lower end of that spectrum, that's great, but I don't need that in order to be happy. The most important thing is putting the Lord first. He'll take care of the other stuff. You
Right.
know, I'm doing what he wants me to do, and I recognize that. So it's just been really helpful. Just seeing that truth when you go back to scripture over and over again and start, you know, really taking that in, it shuts those voices up in your head that are telling you all those lies. You know, at least for a while, you have to keep going back. They're very persistent, but
So in the beginning, how many
Mhm.
times a day did you renew, and what method did you use for renewing?
Well, in the beginning, I got a copy of I Deserve a Donut, and
Hmm.
I was doing the Bible study, Freedom from Emotional Eating, which I've really enjoyed. I enjoyed all of them, but that one really was, maybe it's because it hit me at the right time. So
Hmm.
I would do that in the morning, and then I would renew at lunchtime, well, you know, and then I would renew again at around 3 o'clock. And I didn't in the beginning, I went through all the renewal questions, mostly in order, just
Uh-huh.
to get familiar with them all. But later, I used them based on how I was feeling. Like I'd stop myself and recognize, like try to think about what am I feeling right now? If I wanted to eat right now, what would it be that would be driving me to eat? And I still do that afternoon renewing. I don't know how long I'm going to have to do it regularly.
Okay. And do you do it in
I
writing or in your head?
Oh yeah, in writing. I tried
Okay.
doing it in my head, it didn't work.
Okay, that's good to know. In writing.
Yeah, maybe some people can do that, but I am a writer by trade, and I journal at night, I keep track. And there's just something also, plus with my ADHD, my memory isn't always the best.
Right. Yeah.
There's just something about writing things down. It's a very organic, visceral, in touch with the page. It makes things clear, ideas come to me. There have
The
been
more
times,
senses you use, the more you're likely to get
yeah,
the truth into your
and it
head.
forces me to slow down too and really think about what I'm saying.
Yes,
Whereas
that's good.
Yeah. Whereas if I'm thinking about it, and I have thought about it because I have the app too, and sometimes when I've been out, I've needed to, and then I haven't had my journal on me or something. So I'll do it mentally, and it's good for that. But for the most part, it just writing helps you slow down and really think about what's going on. I'm not as tempted to rush through it, which I might have been otherwise. You have to sometimes, even scripture reading, when I was building a reading my Bible daily habit, if I was in a hurry, I'd like tear through what I was reading and it would make no dent at all. It's just
Right.
thing I think is really helps. You can always use the computer. I've done that too. I have an open document and sometimes
Yeah, I've used the computer too. I do feel like
Mhm.
God pours out more truth when I'm writing, and I don't know if it's any different when I'm typing on the computer. For me, writing might be a little bit better, but in my head, I can do that if it's in a pinch,
Yeah.
but it's not quite as effective. Okay, so we've learned your renewing method. I guess the one question I have for you is you said you've lost the weight, this is your fourth time. And I don't know how long you kept the weight off or how much you still have to go. So I think a lot of people would say, well, how do you know this is the last time? Because if you've done it before, how do
Yep.
you know
I
you're
know.
not going to do it again?
I think in my case, it's been steady. It's been continual. I have not given up after 4 months. Um, Usually I used to call it in the old days, the 3 month stumbling block. I could stick to a diet really well for 3 months and then that was it. It would just all fall apart. And I wouldn't gain it back all at once, but I would suddenly gain 10 pounds or, a couple, months later, I might put on another 5, and within a year, I'd have it all back or a year and a half or so. So this time I've not gained any back. It's been a little slower, which, is to be expected. I'm not as young as I used to be. And I'm also not as gung ho as I used to be. I'm more relaxed about it. I think part of the reason is in the old days, I felt like I was in a race with myself. I had to lose the weight by this date. And if I didn't, I failed. And, the whole world was going to, erupt into giant flames and everybody would be all my fault. Now it's like, there's no rush. I mean, I'll be happy if I get to the weight I want to. If I don't, if I have a weight that I'm comfortable with, like I'd like to lose another 25. If it's another 15 or 20, that's fine too.
And how
I
much
guess
have you lost so far in the last year and a half?
62.
62, that's a lot. And consistently for a year and a half is really good.
Yeah.
And also with all that renewing. Did you
Yes.
ever renew with any of the other 3 times? Did you ever try and
No,
change it?
nothing
No.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just even with the faith-based one, you did it in the morning. And that didn't carry me through the day. And I think that really answers your question is what's different this time is I make the time to renew. And when I know that I need to renew, I renew. And if I know and if I struggle, I stop and think about it. And why did I struggle yesterday? And it's like, well, if I had renewed, would I have been able to make it through? It's like, yeah, I probably would have, because when the truth is right there in front of you, um, it's hard to avoid. So just going back to the word, I think that's what's different is going back to the word continually. And actually, this whole process has taught me to love my Bible more and to go to it more with other things, not just with eating. As a matter of fact, as the eating has been getting better, I've found that I've been using it for other things as well, using my phone too much. What was the other thing? Procrastinating. We've been
Oh,
talking
right.
about,
Hmm.
you know, um, other issues. I've started to renew about those as well. Anger. I was angry with a family member, so I renewed about that. And when you start, it's taught me how to not just in a way I can almost be thankful for the problem with my emotional eating because if I hadn't learned how to deal with it, now I'm learning oh my gosh, I really can use the Bible to address all these things in my life, and that's what the Lord wants. It's more of your behavior being brought under His sovereignty. So I think that's what's different. Is I'll always know now what I didn't know before, which is any problem I have, I can address that through the Word. And if I'm having a problem with my weight again, if I find that I know I'm weak in this area. So there may be a point where I start getting a little bit cocky and comfortable. And if I get on the scale, I weigh myself at regular intervals, not every day. And I see it's up, I'll have to think about things and think, all right, where am I? Am I letting things drift out of God's orbit again? So I have to
Okay.
bring it.
So when you renew, you do the questions in writing, and then do you meditate on the Bible verses afterwards? The Bible
Yes.
verse. So you just meditate on one or more than one, or
Usually just one
uh-huh.
because I find it easier. Sometimes more than one, but never more than three tops
Right. Okay.
because I want to really sink in. And also, it's kind of a little joke. We have a whiteboard on a little stuck to our refrigerator. And if there's one in there, I do this a lot. My husband always, oh, thanks for the new verse today. I'll write it down up there. And then that way, every time I'm passing through one part of the place to the other, and I'll look up and see it and I'll pause and I'll read it.
Oh,
Or
that's
also
good.
being on the refrigerator is a good reminder too. It's like,
I
some of
like
the,
that. Think about
yeah.
throughout the day. Okay. And then one last question,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are listening, they're thinking, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I should renew at 3. All right. Should renew at 12 and 3, like Jennifer did. But they can't make themselves renew. So, how did you make yourself renew in the beginning before you developed the habit?
Ooh, that was very hard because when I'm in a groove with work, sometimes I don't want to stop and renew. So I had to call in reinforcements for that. I had basically I had my husband. First, I have an alarm on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Then I asked my husband, and you can ask somebody else if you don't want to put your spouse in that position, because I never wanted to put him in the position of being food police or anything like, or my stuff like that. But he was always willing to help me with things like that, with spiritual. And I said, please ask me at the end of the day if I renewed this afternoon. And he did. And I didn't like having to tell him, no, I didn't. And then he'd say, well, don't you think you should? You always seem like you're in a better mood. And I'm like, so it was helping him too. It was making me, you're in a better place when you've renewed. So that's how I did. I called in reinforcement. We need help. I was reading in my procrastination Bible study this morning about when Moses was saying, I don't want to do it. Aaron was appointed to help him. So sometimes we do need community for that.
Yeah. And I would say, especially if you're trying to start a renewing habit, I wouldn't
Yes.
say it's an essential to have an accountability partner like that, but for some people it is. If
It's
you've been,
hugely
yeah,
helpful. Yeah. And it could be something as simple if you don't want to, engage a family member. I mean, I know there's a Taste for Truth. I haven't been on there as much lately. Facebook group. You can ask one of them to do it with you. And
yeah.
they
If you go
too.
to groups in Facebook, because a lot of times people ask me if I ever do those Bible studies, which I don't. But if you go to Facebook in the group section and just put Taste for Truth Bible Study in the search engine, or maybe free
Mhm.
promotional eating, I don't know. But you'll find a lot of groups, and some of them will allow people in. So some
Yeah.
people will let
And
anybody in. So find one of those, and I bet you can find. Like, I don't match people up for accountability partners, so try and find
yeah,
somebody. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can find somebody there and they're always willing to help. So it's good
Yeah,
luck. And they'll share verses during the day too. And so
right.
for where you are in the journey.
Okay. Well, boy, it's been great to have you here. I guess, do you have any last words of wisdom for anybody? Somebody who's listening and they're where you were a year and a half ago.
Oh,
What would you tell them to do today after they quit listening to the podcast or tomorrow?
I would say get a get a hold of one of your books. I really got a lot out of Freedom from Emotional Eating to start with. It's a lot of work, but it was so enjoyable. I enjoyed that time with God every morning, and it was so worth it. And don't give up. Like don't think that this is something that can't be overcome. This stronghold can be broken. It's okay if you're always going to struggle with it. But it's not the end of the world. We struggle with something. We're broken and human. You don't have to be perfect. Um, but God has what He can step in. He can help us here. He has the strength when you don't have any. And just keep going back and keep going back. Don't abandon it as saying it was a failure and say, "Oh, this program doesn't work." No program is going to suddenly take away your tendency to do this. It's something you have to just keep working at it. It's not a magic cure. But it does work. And that's what I'd suggest.
Yeah,
Just
that's great. I mean, the Bible says we are transformed by the renewing of our minds. That is an active thing. So it works, but I have never had one single person, and let's see, I published my Freedom from Emotion in 2008. In all that time, 16 years, I've never had one single person write to me and say, I'm renewing my mind 3 times a day and I still am struggling. I can't follow my boundaries. Nobody has ever written that. I mean,
yeah.
unless they started doing it a week ago. But if
Mhm.
they've been consistently renewing their mind several times a day for a month or 2 months, everybody's following their boundaries. Maybe even after the first week. It kind of depends. But everybody who writes and says, I'm not following my boundaries, they can't make themselves renew their mind. So that's the
That's
trick. You got to give
because it's a lot of
accountability.
work. But
Right.
Paul, and I'll just finish off by saying that is my favorite, go to Philippians chapter 4, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. And then finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And that is renewing the mind. That's you're teaching your thoughts, you're training your thoughts to be more like Jesus, the way he would think. And, once you do that, it gets easier.
Right. Yeah. And of course, I have a lot of renewing resources. You mentioned a couple of them. There's also my new book, Say Goodbye to Emotional Eating. That has 100 renewing activities. And then I'm working on a renewing course, How to Renew Your Mind course, which I don't know. I've never made a course for, so I don't know how long they'll take to make. And I also don't know when this podcast is coming out. I'm hoping to have it ready in January, but we'll see, we'll see if
I'm going to
that.
be praying for you about that because I think that'll be really cool.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it
Much.
too, just because I'm working with one new type of renewing that I've never really done before and practicing it. And I'm thinking, oh, this is super helpful too. So it's encouraging me to go back to all my renewing roots, and I'm truth journaling a lot more than I have been for a while. So it's just
Yeah, there
very
are a lot
fun.
of great resources and a lot of different things. One thing is you're having struggle with, you can always try something else and,
Right.
to help you with renewing and just find what works for you. And
Yeah, because different tools will work better for different people. So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Jennifer. It's been great to have you.
Barbara, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and thank you, all of you, for being here today. It was so nice to have you here with Jennifer and I hope you are able to find somebody to help you renew and develop that habit. It's going to be life-changing. Okay, everybody, have a good week following God, following your boundaries, and renewing. We'll talk to you next time.